watching News 2's Sports Extra Daily.
Welcome into this Friday edition of Sports Extra Daily. I'm Kayla Anderson, joined by Emily Proud, and Cal Baxter has his collared shirt on. I couldn't believe it, Cal. I was
Swanky.
like, this is right?
I wanted to change it up today.
I like it. I saw him when he first connected here to Skype, and I'm like, wait a second. He looks like he's going to dinner.
I got dressed up to work. I got dressed up to work.
I love
from
it.
home.
There you go.
You don't have to tell us
But that's what
what
they
the
say.
bottom half of you looks like, but I'm
Exactly.
assuming it's probably
I have
basketball
on
shorts
pants.
or
I have on
jeans
pants.
Okay. I mean,
Well, the thing about it is they say if you're working from home, the best way to simulate that you're actually working, is to get dressed up. And I don't. You guys have more experience working like completely from home, because like this is the first day, like since we started working from home, that I've like completely worked the whole day from home. I've usually gone to the station at some point in time, and then come back. But today was a full day.
so you
at
had to
home,
make it official at the
and-
top, at least. You
dress
know?
for success.
Well,
Yep.
I don't know. I just felt like I put on clothes and I didn't feel like mom. So how's that? Because it's very easy, like to. I mean, I could see how like you guys have to be on TV, so you kind of have to like make sure your presentation is like you feel comfortable about the way you look on TV. But me, this is the only FaceTime that I have to worry about, and it's the internet, and so sometimes it's not as paramount, because we see what makes the internet these days.
Yep,
We appreciate the effort.
So
We do. And when I do work from home, I'm sure the same way. We definitely wear those sweatpants and comfy pants. That's what all I got to say about that one.
Yeah. I look great in my like Nike joggers and blazer.
Yeah, exactly. I love
well,
it.
I did.
Not a good look.
I will say this. I did before I quote unquote clocked in. I did go run a couple errands this morning, so I had to put like clothes on to go do that. And I was like, you know what? I'll change it up. I'll wear a collared shirt. I have them. It just at other times, you guys know this. When you're shooting, you don't always want to wear the nicest
Right.
clothes, because
Ill,
they
sweaty.
get snagged on stuff. Whatever dirt is on the tripod or the bottom of the camera seems to stain and not come out,
Well,
even though you wash it right away. that
Well,
kind of
we
stuff.
are glad you're dressed for success, because I feel like this is a big show. We have so many things to get to. Fridays aren't usually this busy.
Especially in
but
the off
Friday
season now
news
for the
dump.
Titans.
I know, but we start this show off with recent breaking news that Arthur Smith, the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator, has officially been named the new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. It's something that we've heard about. He has done plenty of interviews this week, but they made it official just about a couple hours ago. And I first want to say congratulations to Arthur Smith. We've had the pleasure of working with him from the media standpoint for the last few years. He has been with the Titans organization for a really long time. And the first thing that I thought of and agreed with, I think it was Luke Worsham who tweeted out, any guy that can withstand 3 coaching changes definitely says something about him. Not only what he does on the field, what he produces, but his character as well. And I think, Emily, this is a big reason why Arthur Smith got this job with the Atlanta Falcons. It's one thing to hear it, but then when he gets in there and steps in there and impresses these people, you're like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. And
Well, I
something
think-
that we heard too, when he was originally elevated to be the offensive coordinator, was that he was a very well prepared kind of guy. And so, through all of his interviews this week, that was something that people were kind of joking about, is does he ever sleep? And will he be ready to go for these interviews if he was just coaching in a wild card game the previous weekend, and it was just a no brainer. It was like, of course, this is the most well prepared coach. He's going to be fine. And yeah, I think that too, he doesn't get a lot of credit, I think, for his energy too. He's a guy that I was really surprised with the first time that we saw him in his new role as offensive coordinator. He was very loud, very energetic. I would argue he was even louder than, Mike Vrabel, because Mike Vrabel is one of those coaches that either he's going to yell at you when you do something wrong, or he just sits back and just kind of observes. And so Arthur Smith was go, go, go. He was a guy that was getting sweaty at practice, and he was a guy working really hard. And so I think that this was kind of a no-brainer, but I think it's just so funny. 2 years ago, we were debating the idea of, can Arthur Smith be an offensive coordinator? He's never called plays before. What kind of move is this? And it just seemed like the next progression in his career, and we'd see how we do with it and move on from there. But clearly he took that and ran with it and had, one of the top offenses in the NFL this year and averaging over 30 points a game. And if I'm the Atlanta Falcons and if I'm the 6 other head coaching vacancies that also took a look at him, this seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember that Arthur, I'm looking it up just so I have my numbers exactly right. He basically was a quality control coach in the NFL, which is like the grunt
The lowest
job.
low, yeah. Going through tape.
Yeah.
Basically for 6 years, and then was promoted to assistant tight ends coach when Ken Wisenhunt's reign of terror happened with the Titans, and then was promoted to full-time tight ends coach when Mike Mularkey took over as interim, and then when Mike Mularkey got the job. And then I heard a story today. I was working in Washington, D.C. when he was there, the first 2 years that he was there. And that was during Joe Gibbs 2.0. And I remember I heard a story on the radio today from the Midday 180 guys, and they were talking about, they had an interview set up, I guess back in 2011, it sounds like, with Joe Gibbs at the Super Bowl, and their interview was a little bit away, or I say a little bit away, like not at that moment, but Joe Gibbs walked by and he saw Nashville, and he told the guys, he said, make sure you ask me about Arthur Smith when I do my interview. So like when he came back around, they were like, sure, we'll ask you about Arthur Smith. And so like this is, or I assume it's 2011. It could be more recent than that. But the bottom line is Joe Gibbs, who won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks with the then Washington Redskins of the Washington football team, who is very well respected in the league, has high praise for Arthur Smith back when he was, position coach or even just getting the offensive coordinator gig. So,
well,
I'm not surprised, and quite honestly, this is probably the best fit for him.
I think so too. I mean, he's a Memphis guy. I was telling Emily, I mean, it kind of fits for him to stay in the South. I'm sure that if he was offered another job and he felt like that was the right fit, he would have went there. But I just feel like everything about this job makes sense, including he's going to a team that offensively, I feel like he has something to work with there. I mean, you have Matt Ryan, I know he's 36 and he's not going to be the long-term answer, but for right now, he's not bad to have at the quarterback position. And then you've got 2 wide receivers in Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. It's like, okay, yeah, we can work with that. You got great ownership. I just think all around, guys, I feel like it's a perfect fit.
I think, too, with just you look at Arthur Smith's coaching resume and some of the things that he was particularly good at this year, and that is late game drives, comebacks. I mean, that's why Ryan Tannehill was able to lead the league in fourth quarter comebacks this season. And if we know anything about the Atlanta Falcons, boy, do they like to find unique and interesting ways to lose football games in the final minutes. And so I think the fact that you've got a coach that has proven that he is great in these late game situations and these, just trying to get some points before halftime sort of situations, that's something that the Falcons fans should be really excited about when they're looking at his resume. But yeah, I mean, you've got, I think the biggest question mark that you want to see how he does, because in his 2 years as offensive coordinator, he had the NFL rushing title, Derrick Henry, in both seasons. And so the biggest question mark is what can he do with a Todd Gurley, a guy who seems to be trending in the opposite direction as Derrick Henry. And so we'll see how much he's able to work with that. But in terms of what he's able to work with on the offense, it's huge. And then his bread and butter, which is these situational last-second drives, last-minute drives, and fourth-quarter comebacks, something that Falcons have not been great at. I think that it's a match made in heaven.
You got Hayden Hurst too. I forgot about that. You gotta get his tight ends in there, right?
Well, the thing about it is like of all of the head coaching situations, you're I would say of the open jobs, is it not probably the best job? Like from just a pure team standpoint, like you have a quarterback that's been to the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
who's been a league MVP,
Mm-hmm.
who's put up numbers. You guys have already gone through the roster of offensive players that they have. I just feel like for his fit, that's probably the best scenario.
Well,
I
even
would say
from
the
a
Chargers is a really good job, just with the
Yeah.
prospect of
Yeah,
Justin
but
Herbert.
there's some upside there, but you're not like, I feel like the Falcons may be a little more ready-made to win, like win right now,
they've got
as opposed to maybe some of these other teams. The Chargers are
the
loaded,
Chargers
But
have
Cal,
you know,
talent.
and
Cal, you got to
A
factor
lot
in
of
the
it.
division. Our little Saints fan over here. It's tough
Right.
games
I
with the
don't
Falcons.
disagree
I would
with
say it's a
you. Well,
toughest division.
it's a tough division, but I just feel like from you're not, with like I say Darnold and the Jets. Now they've got their own guy in Robert Salah, and the Chargers. Um, there's you're still scratching the surface of like these quarterbacks. Like you really haven't. You don't like what Matt Ryan is like, and the good thing that Arthur Smith is going to do is he's going to tailor his offense to fit Matt Ryan's abilities, as opposed to trying to fit a round peg in a square hole kind of
And
thing.
you're also not going to a media market where it's, for me, a too drastic of a change for Arthur, because Arthur is also used to Nashville. And as much as we've seen recent success, more national headlines, he's used to kind of not having a ton of attention on that organization. And while the Atlanta Falcons are a big market, I don't feel like that pressure is there as much as some of these other jobs that were open, especially obviously the one that comes to mind is the New York Jets,
Yeah.
But also in Detroit, because they don't have much there,
Yeah, well, I think too, somebody, I can't remember which one of you mentioned ownership, and with Arthur
Yeah.
Blank, the other Arthur, I think he had a leg up in the interviews there with the
I
name.
know, right? What's up, Arthur?
Yeah, but he's known for being pretty patient. I mean, I think that we can all agree that Dan Quinn got considerably more time than he probably should have. But they still love him there, and he's a guy I think that says a lot about Dan Quinn too, and that he's so well respected.
Good person.
And and people just loved him. But there wasn't like they were able to separate the human from the losing, and so I think that you've got kind of the kindness and the longevity that hopefully Arthur Smith will get to experience there as well. But yeah, it seemed like a no-brainer as soon as we found out earlier today that he had been offered the job. It was just kind of checking the clock, waiting to get the official news. That we do have to shout out. It did officially break thanks to the Bussin' with the Boys podcast.
With the boys, right?
So breaking some news here and there. I'm not sure how much more they will be breaking. This
I don't either.
Pretty close to them,
I will say they were close to the source.
Let's
put it that just way. A little bit. Just a little bit. Real quick before we move on to what's next for the Titans at the offensive coordinator position, it is fun, you guys, if you can go on Twitter and really look at what some of the Titans players are saying. We've retweeted a lot of them on our Twitter accounts if you want to go look. But everybody from A.J. Brown to defensive players. I mean, you got Kenny Vaccaro, Daquan Jones. I mean, this is obviously a guy that so many people had strong feelings about and nothing but positive feelings. It's really cool to see these Titans players wishing him the best and just the things that they have said about him. It truly is amazing. I have covered a lot of teams, but this is a guy that has really, I mean, grown on so many people, and it's only good stuff that I ever hear. So it's kind of cool.
I mean, it's everywhere it seems that Arthur Smith has been, like, I mean, and I know that there's not many people are going to throw shade on the day that the guy gets one of 32 jobs in the world, but you feel like there's a lot of people that in his years in the league that Arthur Smith has made a positive impact on, and like people respect the grind.
Yeah.
that he's been through
Yep.
to get to this level.
Mhm.
I mean, he at least called plays for 2 years. Matt LaFleur called
I
them for
know,
1,
right?
and now it's
Slightly more
everybody.
proven.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, it is.
So when you're ready. So I just want an interesting statement that I saw Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk post last week, that it's smarter for teams to hire an offensive coach
Mhm.
because they feel like it's easier to replace a defensive coordinator than possibly an offensive coach. So like say the Falcons, if they'd have hired Kyle Shanahan the first time around,
Mhm.
they wouldn't be in this predicament.
Sure. I would agree with you on that.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's something to be said for look at what he's done in San Francisco,
yeah.
and look what he's in Shanahan, what he did in Washington before he left, was left with McVay and those guys, and like those teams are set. It's debatable because if you have a CEO coach kind of like Vrabel who kind of does a little bit of everything, it may work.
Mhm.
But then you look at what Vrabel's doing is this is the second time in 3 years he's had to replace his offensive coordinator.
Mhm.
And at the same time he's basically replacing his defensive coordinator too because he refused to
Yep.
do it last year.
Yeah. But there are some offensive coaches that, don't find success in the league. I'd say Adam Gase and Bill O'Brien, two of the most recent
True,
ones.
but those are guys that you got to think and Corey and I've talked about this before, horses for courses and things like that. Like some coaches are not made to be head coaches.
Yeah.
And they when they are given the chance to run the ship,
Mhm.
it doesn't always pan out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Or
and one thing
They're
I'll
better
say
to
too,
be
to just kind
coordinators.
of tie a bow, because we've been pumping sunshine and this is all positive, but I do think it's a little strange to hire a head coach before a general manager. So that's still the wild card that Arthur Smith is walking into, as they don't necessarily know. But maybe that means that they're going to give him, some say in
some
what
say in
happens.
it.
But
But that's
that
kind of
is
like
kind
the
of the
new.
wild
But
card
that's
here is they don't know necessarily who the general manager is going to
Yeah.
be. Got to be able to jive with Arthur Smith, because
but that's the
it's coming
trend now.
first.
I mean,
Hmm?
that's kind of the trend now when you have both openings. It happened here in Tennessee to some degree. You had Rustin Webster and Ken Wisenhunt were let go,
Mm.
and you had, Mark Malarkey was in their interim chair, and they hired John Robinson at the same time, and they were supposedly in lockstep with each
And what
other.
happened to Mike
And that
Malarkey? He got
and
fired
that
after winning a
soured
playoff game. It happens,
soured
but it
after
doesn't
2 years.
Robinson had
bode
his
well for the head
mindset.
coach, because they want to
Well,
bring in their guy.
Bill Parcells famously said, "If you got to cook the meal, you should at least let me pick the groceries."
Yeah, and I would
So,
think I'm gonna guess that Arthur is gonna have some say. That's just my thought, just because this is completely their guy in terms of everybody but the GM. So I would think that would be part of it. Moving on, because now, like Cal mentioned, the Titans not only need a defensive coordinator, but they need an offensive coordinator. And the one thing that goes through my mind is, wow, they're going to be busy, because you have to get
busy.
right. You have to get the
Gotta cover.
right guy too, because here's the thing, you guys. There was such fluidity when they named Arthur Smith the offensive coordinator. There wasn't a lot of change going on, right? So the offense, it was like a smooth transition. Whereas when you take somebody from the outside, bring them in, there's always a little bit of an adjustment period. And we didn't really see much of that this season. It just went from the offense we saw at the end of the year to the offense that we saw for mostly the entire season. So my question to you guys is, does Mike Vrabel hire someone from within, or is he going to go out to get his offensive coordinator? And what names would come to mind?
I think he's got options for sure internally, and it's funny the way that you kind of broke that down, Kayla. It just made me think of Marcus Mariota, and how many times did we talk about when they were hiring new offensive coordinators, and he was going through his fourth and fifth play caller during his career with the Titans, and we were talking about, okay, you need to hire someone within to help with the continuity and the importance of somebody that's already been in the system, so the language isn't that different and everything like that. And so a name that was talked about when I think it was when Arthur Smith was being hired after Matt LaFleur left or was being promoted after Matt LaFleur left, was Pat O'Hara, the quarterback's coach. He's a guy that has a lot of experience calling plays, not in the NFL, but in the AFL. And so he has experience play calling. Also, the positive reason that was given for him to stay was the fact that he had worked closely with Marcus Mariota, and obviously the quarterback is the most important position on your team. And so to have that continuity and to have that success, and we saw what Pat O'Hara has been able to do with Ryan Tannehill, and we give Arthur Smith a lot of credit for his resurgence in the NFL after having some up and down sort of years with the Dolphins. But I think a lot of the credit should go to O'Hara as well, the guy that works with him one-on-one every single day. And so he's a name that will potentially be, floating out there. And then the only other guy on staff that has play calling experience is Todd Downing, the tight ends coach. He used to be the offensive coordinator with the Raiders for a season. Wasn't a great offense, didn't go great, but he kind of left when the head coach left. But what are you looking at, Cal?
Well, no, that's kind of what I was looking at, is who on the Titans offensive staff has play calling experience.
But it didn't matter with Arthur Smith, so
it didn't matter with Arthur Smith. No,
it's not very juicy though.
It's not a prerequisite, but it's kind of it helps. And Downing, obviously Pat O'Hara is a little older than Todd Downing. But then you have the other guy that you think maybe Keith Carter, the offensive line coach.
Which, remember, a couple years ago we wanted gone.
Well, that's what I was going to say. like the first year in 2018, at the beginning of the year, he was like persona non grata. Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing how guys' fortunes turn, because all of a sudden he goes from the outhouse to the penthouse because now the offensive line is playing well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My thought is, if you're going to stay in house, it's got to be either Todd Downing or O'Hara.
Yeah.
Now I could be completely wrong and go outside, but from a continuity sake, it would lead me to believe that one of those two guys, like, I don't know, just looking at like Tony Dews and Rob Moore, those guys have.
I think they're so much better specialized.
But what I like about Tony Dews, though, is he has coached every single position at some point except for the quarterback position. And I think the fact that he's had his hand in the cookie jar in a lot of different areas, I think will definitely help. I mean, not just on offense, on defense too. Also, he coached a 2,000-yard rusher and a guy who's back-to-back rushing title in the NFL. And so he's got a pretty nice resume, but again, another one of those guys that hasn't called plays.
Yep.
Ultimately, it's Mike Vrabel's team, so he's gonna be the ultimate. The buck stops with him as far as calling. How the offense looks. Mm-hmm. So
does he go out and get one of his guys? I mean, he's so known to do.
Well, I mean, the guy that I don't know who's out there from his guy standpoint, from an offensive standpoint. We know that his guys out there are defensive guys.
Mm-hmm.
But like we don't have this laundry list of. He didn't know Matt LaFleur when he hired him.
Right, that is correct.
That was just the stamp of approval from John Robinson. That was like,
and he inherited Arthur Smith.
Yep.
So
that's what's interesting.
I mean, he could, but I would tend to believe, the way things have trended or have been trending with this offense, that you would stick in house and select, O'Hara, Dews, or Todd Downing or Keith Carter. The only question is who is Arthur Smith going to bring with him to Atlanta?
And these guys on the staff love him as well. So it's like, if he gives them an opportunity, I can definitely see them going with Arthur. From everything that we've heard, he's good to work with. Easy to work with. They'd have a chance.
He's only he's been with the Titans for the last decade, and so he hasn't made. I mean, obviously he's got connections. He knows people within the league, but you would think that when he's been with an organization that long, that his pool for potential candidates and guys that he knows and trusts are sitting in Nashville right now. Yeah. Another outside name, though, I will throw out, though, that there was a report earlier this week that he called what's his name, Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator for Clemson, to gauge his interest and whether or not he's willing to make the jump from the NFL. And so I don't think that we should rule out potential college candidates either.
That's a trend too.
And they just and so speaking of that, I saw a report that Dabo is shuffling his staff, and like Tony Elliott is no longer the offensive coordinator.
That's interesting.
A lot of people are interested. The part of the report was
so-
that Vrabel was one of many interested suitors
Yeah.
from the NFL. So
I don't know. I mean, it just it'll be interesting because, you know, I think back to 2 years ago, Emily, you and I were driving to the Senior Bowl, and there were, you know, Matt LaFleur had been hired as the Green Bay head coach, and we were like, this is perfect. And then we spent like the better part of the day and a half playing Where's Waldo with Arthur Smith because he was
he spotted.
hard to spot. Yeah, he was on the other side, but it was.
But he was the
he
belle
was
of the
very,
ball. I mean, what happened when we first pulled up and we saw him literally right when we walked into the stadium, and there were so many coaches coming up to him, telling him congratulations, like also. So yeah, it was interesting to see that, and yeah, that's kind of more of the same today with all of his players and a lot of people saying how deserving he is. But we'll see.
And I did want to mention really quick, keep this in mind too, you guys. If Vrabel does go outside of the Titans, if you're a guy who wants to advance, wants a chance at elevate, I mean,
awesome job.
Hi, hello. I'd be coming to Tennessee to work with this offense.
Yeah, I mean, not just personnel wise, but you look at the history of offensive coordinators. I mean, the last two are now head coaches in the NFL, and so there's a lot of room for advancement. You've got great weapons. You have to see kind of what happens in the off season. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of positives, and this is definitely a very attractive job for sure.
Cal, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I just Matt LaFleur was probably destined to be a head coach long before it just was wherever his next stop was.
Buddy, so
because he was 6 degrees of separation from Sean McVay, and then that was the hot trend.
I wonder too if offensive coordinators prefer to go to teams with defensive head coaches because they give them a little bit more wiggle room and more, ability to. I know obviously Mike Vrabel has his hands in everything, but if that's kind of the biggest knock against Eric Bieniemy too with the Chiefs, right? Is they're like, well, Andy, one that's really pulling the strings. So what's he actually doing? You completely get rid of that question mark when you are an offensive coordinator and the head coach has defensive coaching experience. That that it's his offense. He ran.
Well, and Vrabel openly admits that he hasn't coached quarterbacks and things and those positions. So he's not going to try and say, well, I've coached. I'm the head coach. I know what I'm doing from from coaching specific quarterbacks.
Let the guy do his thing.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Urban Meyer. I just sit here and kind of chuckle, guys, because we all were like, what is his next move? While we thought maybe he could stay just doing the broadcast thing, you knew Urban Meyer was going to still have that itch. He's not that old. And whether it was going back to college and all those jobs that he was rumored and connected to, and now he decided to completely, get rid of that. And he's going for the big one. He's going for the NFL. I mean, obviously now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, guys, I covered this guy for 3 years up in Columbus. I saw him win a national championship in 2014. One thing I'll say about him is this guy knows how to win, okay? And I know that was at the college level, but he has a different mind. He has a mind like a Bill Belichick. He has this football brilliant mind. The problem that I see is, first of all, the Jacksonville Jaguars are the worst team in the NFL. And
that is pick.
Right. That is going to be a project. And Urban Meyer isn't really used to projects, right? I mean, he's kind of just had the success. And I wonder, is it going to be something that he gets frustrated with and is like, okay, I'm done. While he did put out today, he has grown a little bit more, and he's not going to run around like a nut. So the health questions, he said he's going to try to maintain that.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up 2 questions. I can bring up about 20. I think that the thing that comes with Urban Meyer is the baggage, and he's had it at basically every stop he's been at, except for when he was in Utah and all the success, and then it kind of went downhill from there, going to Florida and having all the drama there with Aaron Hernandez and just the multiple arrests and the trouble that they got into there and some recruiting issues and that sort of thing. And then, of course, with Ohio State, the way that it ended, super, super messy. The fact that he's retired multiple times, has cited that he has pretty extreme health issues. He said he had a cyst on his head, and you could see him on the sideline during that last season with Ohio State. I mean, he would huddle over, and he was holding his head. And so, there's a lot of question marks that come with that. The biggest question mark is, or the least question mark is that, can he win? Clearly he can win. He has won everywhere that he's been. He has that coaching acumen that, he said that today in his press conference. They were like, well, obviously, the NFL is different than college. Why do you feel, that you can have success in the NFL? And he said, there's the outside stuff is different. You don't have the very, young and impressionable 17, 18, 19-year-olds that you're able to kind of get when they are young and kind of mold them into the type of player that you want them to be. But he said that it's the same between the white lines. And so clearly he knows football. He talked about how he's been studying the NFL for the last 6 months, and that's how he knew he was ready for this job. But he also said he took it because he thought that he could have success. And not only just with the roster that they've got and kind of the young talent that they have, but the fact that you've pretty much got Trevor Lawrence coming in as the number 1 overall pick. They've got a lot of salary cap space. They've got a lot of draft picks this year, not just the number 1 overall pick. And so I think it's an attractive job for anybody. But when Urban Meyer comes in, you do have a lot of question marks in terms of kind of the baggage that he brings with him.
Here's my thing. All coaches are control freaks.
Yeah.
All of them. But the ones that succeed are like uber control freaks. It's the reason that Nick Saban couldn't win
in
at
Miami. Yep.
Is because he couldn't control these
Exactly.
guys.
You get what you get in the NFL. I mean, you
24/7. You're not. You don't have. You don't. It's not like you can go stockpile 4 and 5 stars in.
Yeah.
And so, and then on top of that, how much time you can monopolize of these players is collectively bargained in the CBA, and the players have recourse, which I mean they have recourse in college, but it's really not the same. You don't have a union to protect you. And then on top of that, these are grown men who are making millions of dollars, and if they don't like what you're saying and they tell you to go take a hike, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you can't control those guys. I mean, you can do that in college for the most part.
So, and I read a story today on The Athletic, Andy Staples, and I think it was a story about Urban's second year at Florida. And coaches, they like to be set in their ways, and his team did not have the they were only in their second year, so they were still struggling to kind of get a foothold with the players and their system established. And going into the cocktail party game, they changed everything and did things that those players, the older players, were more comfortable with. And it threw Georgia off. And the thing about the NFL, and Vrabel says this all the time, is it's a week-to-week league. Okay, and so in college, you line up and run your stuff, and if you have 4 and 5 stars, you're going to
be better,
blow the competition away. And at Florida and at Ohio State, Urban Meyer had more talent than anybody, or had as much talent. So the talent pool in the NFL is much smaller because everybody's good.
Yeah.
And so that's why being a week-to-week league and changing things up and doing things for that specific week. I mean, you have your bread and butter stuff, but you do a lot that's that week specific. And I hope that Urban Meyer can understand that, because if he tries to be hard-headed and just run what he's got or what he's good at, he's going to get beat.
And here's the thing. I heard him and the interview that the Jaguars tweeted out today, the team interview, and I can't tell you how many times he brought up how important this coaching staff is going to be and how he has already started to put that together. And it's going to be huge in terms of having success. And he isn't a guy that's been in the NFL. Sure, he has connections everywhere, but
coached a lot of NFL players.
Right. He has. And he could very well bring some of those NFL players that he's coached in the past on the staff. From everything I know, I'd heard rumors that Tim Tebow was coming there, but then I think he shut that down. I'll believe it when I see it. But they have to be the right fit, you guys. I mean, this is what's going to take time, and he's got to get it right.
Well, and the other thing that coaches in the NFL have to get is buy-in, and it's the same buy-in. It's a similar buy-in to to college, but it's not the same because again, you're dealing with grown men
Mm-hmm.
who have wives, children, girlfriends,
Yeah.
that
This is
kind
a
of. They have
job.
other things to work. They have the other things to. Yeah, it's a job. You get paid. You get compensated well to play football. And so I think that'll be a challenge because
Mm-hmm.
motivating guy like I think because when I go out to college practice, it's been a while, but I see how college coaches act, and I kind of laugh because
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, when I was like 18 to 22, you probably would have listened to that.
Yeah.
Like I could see as my age now, I'm like, yeah, that's not working for me.
Right.
I'll be motivated on my
Yeah.
own, and that's kind of what you need
And I think he'll,
in the
I think for
NFL.
the most part, being in Jacksonville is a good media market for him too. I know we talked about that with Arthur Smith.
Yes.
Sure.
But I do think that he's going to have to answer questions from his own players. I
Yeah.
think that they will have some question marks about, certain things that have happened. I think the biggest question they're going to ask him is, are you healthy enough to coach? I mean, if they see him kind of, lagging on the sideline, and he's said that he has some serious issues. He has memory lapse, at media day, and so there's all sorts of things that kind of present some red flags, and so he's going to have to answer those questions to his guys. And I will say something that is helping him is the fact that this team is so young, and they're drafting in a bunch of players too. So you're getting kind of guys fresh
He
out.
can be impressionable.
It's
Yeah.
one thing like
Yeah.
I would think like if he would step in and coach like the Ravens or something right now,
Yeah.
and you look at the guys that are on defense, the guys that have been there for so long and have are very like solidified in their place in the NFL, and they have some guy coming in who's a rah college coach, like you can do this, like that's going to be off-putting to them. But I do think that the fact that they are rebuilding actually helps him. I know that there's issues obviously with, does the guy know how to lose? Can he handle it? Like you said, Kayla, but I do think that the fact that it's rebuilding and he's kind of taking this organization and with the support
That'll
of
get you
Shad
so
Khan, I do
far
think that it will help.
because that's going to only get you so far
Yeah.
because
I don't know about the
good
longevity,
NFL
but I think what he's walking
good
into right now
NFL
is a good system for him.
no, I don't disagree with you there, but I'm just saying like most good NFL teams have a solid mix of veterans and young players. Yes, if you have a
The
very
Jags
young
shipped all their
roster,
veterans off to other teams in the offseason.
and I get that, but if you're in that getting in that impressionable stage, yes, that will only get you so far in the NFL. You've got to have seasoned guys.
And he seemed to come into it too with an open mind too. He was asked, about the system that he ran and if that was something that he was going to implement. And he was like, I've been doing a lot of studying of not just the Jags, but of teams across the NFL and seeing, what the league looks like these days, what works, what doesn't, that sort of thing. And so another guy that I think is going to come in well prepared and understanding the rigors of the job. I don't think he's going to be blown away and be like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. I think that, time will tell if he can, but he'll come in with a good set of knowledge about what it'll take in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the stubbornness has subsided a little bit since the days in college. I mean, he's had a little bit of time off, and he's smart enough to know that that's not going to work in the NFL. He is a smart guy, regardless of the mistakes that he's made.
I think he's going to take. I will say this. I mean, I think like any new coach, he will probably take some lumps last year or next year, and learn from them on how to every new coach and new situation. I mean, I would be willing to bet you that Arthur Smith will take his lumps.
Yep.
And we know Mike Vrabel took his lumps 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And even with all of Urban's extensive head coaching experience, I think it'll be a challenge at the outset of how to make it work at the NFL level for him.
Yeah, I'll end with this on Urban. Shelly, his wife, told me back in Columbus that the only other job that she would move to for him to take a head coaching position would be somewhere in Florida. So I guess Shelly was right?
She ever been to Jacksonville?
Oh yeah,
Gotta share the Gainesville. I will give it that.
It's funny. I know. I'm like, well, if you like Gainesville,
you're gonna love Jacksonville.
I guess you're gonna love Jacksonville. Jacksonville, right? Not my cup of tea, but whatever. Do you guys want to get to the Jets hire? And I know we're running out of time here. Do you
Emily's got to go.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh, that is who they hired.
There you go.
There is now 4 minority
Yep.
head coaches in the NFL. Good on them. And good on the 49ers. They get
He
2
just looks
compensatory
like
checks.
he's the Jets head coach.
He does. I think people are considerably more excited about him than they were when they hired Adam Gase. He's going to bring some energy and probably fewer floating tacos. So
Exactly.
I mean, he was probably. I mean, he was coveted. He's been coveted for a few years.
Yep.
And, you know, I think the 49ers getting to the Super Bowl last year
Helped a little bit, right?
helped put more eyes on it.
Yep.
And so I'm not surprised. It was just a matter of time where he landed. So
Okay, well, Emily does have to go. I just looked at the time. So we're going to wrap this thing up. And I hope you guys, I feel like we had some good stuff in there. I know it was all football, but that's what was happening today. Thanks for all of you out there watching. Thanks, Cal. Thanks, Emily. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back here on Monday. Take care, guys.